Welcome everyone to 52 Living Ideas. Tonight we are going to we are continuing the Design Your Life series, and this month's topic is going to focus on polymathy. I don't know if I made that word up when I put the title on the website, but tonight we have here Angela. Angela, I don't want to butcher your last name, so
Cotellessa.
Cotellessa, right? Did I say that right? Okay. So Jing is going to give her full introduction, but I wanted to welcome you here. And thank you for coming and thank you for speaking today. So tonight the order of the evening is, I'm going to give a quick recap on what we've studied so far in the Design Your Life series. And then Jing is going to do an introduction into Angela. Then Angela's going to do her presentation, and then we're going to go into the breakout rooms. And then when we come back, go back a little bit. First, we're going to, after the presentation, we're going to have a short question and answer period before we go into the breakout rooms. And then we're going to have some questions that we want to ask. And then after that, we're going to come back and we're going to do more questions with Angela. And then we're going to do takeaways. So welcome, everyone. So I just wanted to go over really quickly what we did in the past few months. We started this in July, I want to say, and we just started by noticing what we have gotten from doing 52 Living Ideas and participating in 52 Living Ideas. Joe talked about Stoicism for a bit. I talked about, the Gospel of John and the Bhagavad Gita, and and what I got from it and how it has made my life better by being able to focus on the center, which is the core of who I am and who I want to be. And so we talked about that. And then just before this meetup in November, we had Tim Holmes on, who was a sculpturist. That's a word I'm probably making up. He's a sculpture artist. Let's go with that. And what he did was he showed us his sculptures. He made sculptures for various famous people, and then he showed us his gallery and how he's designed his life around his art and how he was able not only to do it but to be successful and to have a great living. So this is what we study. Like, the focus is on how do we take these ideas that we are learning and bring them into real life and really make them applicable to real life, and how do you take action on it? I know, Angela, this was before my time with 52 Living Ideas, did quite a few presentations from what my understanding is with 52 Living Ideas. So we are happy to welcome back. This is my first time hearing her. So I'm excited, and I did not look at the YouTube videos because I wanted it to be fresh. So Jing, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. First, I want to share a quick one slide. We were talking about 2023, and we have this Design Your Life chart we had before, and I was trying to put down the things that I need to improve in different areas of the life. And I realized, is it working?
No, could you actually just share the slide?
Yeah, I did, but I'm not sure why it's Zoom. Anyway, maybe I just don't share slide.
Wait a minute, Jane, when you go to the share screen, do you see like different screens?
Okay. Yeah, sorry. Okay, let's just skip the slides. So what I want to share is, like, at Polymaths, we all have the challenge. We have so many hats, so many things we want to do. And the planning, the Design Your Life is kind of juggling all kinds of balls in the air and try to keep it in the air. And so we are very lucky to have Angela to join us today to share her expertise in Polymath and how help us to design our life as a polymath. Angela get her PhD polymath in can you mute, Emily?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Angela wears multiple hats. She's a polymath scholar, writer, speaker, consultant, and coach. And she's a founder of Polymath Place community, which I joined, a Facebook group, very active. I think quite a few people here may be from there as well. And also the book In Pursuit of Polymath, Understanding Renaissance Persons of 21st Century. So I think we want, let me introduce Angela. I think a lot of people familiar with her. She have gave several presentations before with respect to living ideas. So let's introduce Angela to share her as polymath, how she designed her life, and we can learn something from her. Angela.
Well, first of all, thank you, Evanique and Jang and Joe for having me here again. It's good to be back with 52 Living Ideas. And hello to all those familiar faces that know who I am and I know who you are. And also hello to the people I don't know. I hope you enjoyed this session. I am going to share some slides now, so we can dive right in. All right, can you guys see that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay, I don't know what that was, but I hope we're not getting Zoom bombed.
It's
Okay.
fine. It's been removed.
Okay.
Yeah, I remove the person.
All right. A little bit about me, just real quick. So I spent 15 years, most of my adult life, working in the federal government, and most of that time was spent in training and development. I started my career after a White House intern and worked at the Executive Office of the President for 6 years, which was really cool. But most of my time was spent at a place called the Center for Leadership Development, where we did training and development. And then I got my doctorate in education. The exact degree title is Human and Organizational Learning. And there's my dissertation right on the screen. By the way, it is available for free on ResearchGate. If you Google the title there, you'll find it for free digitally, or you can purchase a hard copy on Amazon if you prefer that. And I enjoy giving presentations and webinars, and I'm doing all I can to promote Angela. Actually enjoy it. All right, I think you guys know the plan for today, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this. I know Evanique already shared plan, so I'm going to skip over that pretty quickly. And I'm going to start at the very beginning. What is polymathy? And by the way, please put in the chat, how familiar are you with the concept of polymathy? Have you heard of it? Have you never heard of it? Do you identify as a polymath? Let me know. I'd love to hear how familiar you are with this concept. All right, but first, let me provide an actual definition of it. My scholarly father, in a way, I joke that he's my scholarly dad, is Robert Root Bernstein. He and his wife, Michelle, have come up with this definition of polymathy. And I like to share this whenever I teach so that we're all on the same page about what we're talking about. So polymathy is active engagement in multiple interests or endeavors, integrating vocations with avocations, so work and hobbies, simultaneously or serially across the lifespan. So basically, it's like being a Renaissance man or woman. It literally means many learnings. Poly is many, math is short for manthano in Greek, which means learning. It's not being a narrow specialist, even though we live in the age of specialization. These people are high in openness to experience. They have high intrapersonal diversity. They're intellectuals with diverse domains of knowledge. Hopefully that makes sense. Also, it involves breadth, so versatility in terms of what you know and what you've been exposed to, but also depth. It's not being a dabbler. It's not being a dilettante. Polymathy implies you have some real command over at least 2 or 3 professional arenas, as well as a broad array of hobbies and friends. It's basically being a very open, broad person. I like to point this out too. Some of the scholars and thinkers in this field make polymathy only for the elite. They kind of relegate it to people in history books, who are not living in current day. And I just feel like, what's the point of that? What's the use of that if polymathy is not even attainable for any of us? So you do not have to be Leonardo da Vinci for polymathy to be relevant in your life. And so it exists on a spectrum, and where you are on that range may change over the lifespan, over your lifespan. But what I tell people is, you can be polymathic, you can value polymathy and pursue polymathy without being a polymath. Hopefully that makes sense. So it's not necessarily like, am I a polymath or aren't I? It's not yes or no, black and white, but there's a whole lot of gray. And obviously, assignment as being polymathic is something that you decide for yourself. Right now, there's no external body. Sometimes people come to me and they want me to give them a stamp of approval, like yes or no, they are polymathic or a polymath. But at the end of the day, I mean, this is you deciding how to live your life, your best life, really. And I think polymathy is a route. It's a path to get to the life of your dreams, actually. And I'm going to talk more about that. But first, here are a few quick examples. Oprah Winfrey, love her. She's a talk show host, television producer, actress, author, and philanthropist. Mayim Chaya Bialik, also known as Blossom, is a child actress, game show host, author, writer, director. She has a PhD in neuroscience. She's vegan, and she's a founding member of this Jewish organization that advocates the ethical treatment of animals called Varetz Institute. There's Arnold Schwarzenegger. He had very successful careers in politics, entertainment, and bodybuilding, and also as a businessman. And then Bruce Lee was a martial artist, actor, director, martial arts instructor, and philosopher. He was the founder of a hybrid martial arts philosophy, drawing from different combat disciplines, which is polymathic in nature. That is often credited with paving the way for modern mixed martial arts. Oh my gosh, there were a whole lot of M letters right there. He's considered by commentators, critics, media, and other martial artists to be the most influential martial artist of all time. Martial artist, can we just call it martists? And he's a pop culture icon too. He bridged the gap between East and West. That was another function he served, very polymathic. So those are a few examples of highly successful polymaths. Now we're going to talk about the experience of it. All right. Characteristics of polymathic learning. All right. Self-directed learning is a big part of being polymathic because no one tells you your zigzag path, your combination. Maybe you have pressure in certain areas, but when it comes down to it, the ingredients you put into the soup of your life is up to you. It is your journey. So self-directed learning is a big part of it. Curiosity. You cannot be polymathic without curiosity. You're not going to turn into a highly accomplished, command of multiple subjects unless you got some real desire to learn because you're curious. Having knowledge across disciplines is, of course, very important because if you only have knowledge in one discipline, that obviously means they're not very polymathic at all. So having knowledge across disciplines, and the further apart they are, the more polymathic you are. So there may be some disciplines like accounting and budget or something, which are close. So that's not being very polymathic. But if you've worked in finance and IT or IT and HR, clearly those are broader, farther apart. And so that means you would be more polymathic in your professional life. Polymathy involves lifelong, but also life-wide learning. I love this concept of life-wide learning. One of the ways I think about polymathy is it's kind of being all in at life itself. It's not siphoning off experience or censoring what you want to have. It's not going in a box. It's not getting in the cage. It's not fitting in the silo. It's not fitting in general. It's becoming an original. So that lifelong and life-wide, the versatility of what you're learning is really important if you want to be polymathic in your human experience. Adaptability. Now, because polymaths have more tools in their toolkit, and because they like change and newness and a variety by nature, they tend to be a bit more adaptable. So that's a plus, isn't it? And they also, as a general rule, tend to be more comfortable with ambiguity because they know they can learn their way through problems. They don't get so anxious when they don't know an answer because they go, I'll figure it out. All right, next, what is it like being a polymath? Okay, let's talk about the benefits of it. There's a sense of freedom. There's a sense of, you're not going to tell me how to live my life. It's my life. Right? That feels good. Authenticity. Polymathy for me is the route to authenticity. It's the way to finding what fits for you in your life. You sample, you try, you experiment, you change, you grow, you evolve. And in that process, you figure out who you really are and what really resonates with you for now, because it may change in the future too, by the way, as you continue to pursue your own authenticity. Creativity is the superpower of a polymath because they have so many tools in their toolkit. They're able to come up with creative solutions, to be original, to make new combinations, to do analogical thinking, where you take one approach from over here and try it over here. Maybe it's never been done over there before. And there's some creativity and innovation right there. You need to be brave to be a polymath. And being brave can feel good too. It can also feel scary. But when you're not fitting in, when you're breaking a mold, when you're not fitting in the box, when you're expressing your onlyness and your originality, that takes some guts. It takes guts to do that. But to me, that's what living really is. To me, it's not really living if you're just people pleasing and fitting in narrow silos and boxes because someone else told you a narrative that that's what success looks like. Like, you have to define for yourself, what is success? What is success in your life? Think about that. That's a thought question. That would be a good breakout room question. What is success in a life? What is a life well lived? For me, a life well lived means you have the full human experience. You're not here to be a slave or to fit in or to conform. You actually are honest with yourself about who you are, and you let the world see it too. And if they don't like it, well, then that's their loss, isn't it? Living outside the box, I think I've sort of already painted that. Like, this is not a place for comfort necessarily, but you know what? There's no comfort in the growth zone. There's no growth in the comfort zone. If you want to be the best self, if you want to live your best life, you must get comfortable with being a little bit uncomfortable sometimes. If you let your fear control you, it will keep you small and safe and shriveled and not very fulfilled in your life. If you want to live a good life, I shouldn't say this. Make fear your, that's what I say. Make fear your bitch. Don't be controlled by your emotions. Learn to harness it. Learn to take your fear and your anxiety and use it for fuel, rather than letting your fear stop you and freeze you forever. Work through your fear, play with your fear, and it may even become fuel for your fire to help you achieve your goals. Another key element of being polymathic is that because you've had so many broad experiences, it's so much easier to find common ground with other people. And it's one of my hopes for polymathy is that in addition to enriching individual lives, that polymathy becomes a way to build bridges across people who are different races, different sexes, different ages, things we can't change. But we know what we're passionate about. We know what we like to learn about. We know what brings us alive. Let's combine our passions. Let's talk about the stuff we really care about and find common ground, even if we're very different people. Polymathy allows those bridges to be built so much more easily than if you're a one-trick pony and you only got one thing to talk about. It's harder to meet other people and feel that sense of belonging and bond and connection and commonality. It's also just easier to solve problems when you have more tools in your toolkit, when you've invested your time and energy into learning and mastering your own capabilities and capacities. You have more tools to solve problems. And then the other thing is, when you have a problem, the point that the thing that makes it a problem is the fact that you don't know how to solve it. So you have to learn your way through the problem. You got to figure it out. That's how you solve problems. You learn your way through problems. Polymaths, many learnings. They're good at learning. They're dedicated to learning. They exercise their thinker. And so it's easier to solve problems. And if you don't know how to solve it, you're better at figuring it out because you're willing to stretch your perspective and learn. Also, you can feel unique and special. You're not a copy. You're not pretending. You let out your truest essence when you pursue the path of the polymath. You're a nonconformist. All right, now the cons. There are downsides. I don't want to mislead you and make you think this is an easy way to live your life, because it's not. You may be perceived as being uncommitted or flighty or distracted because you might want to switch things up, as opposed to the narrative that says, oh, you pick your thing and you stick with it, no matter how much you hate it, no matter how miserable you are, pick your damn thing and stay there. Who wants to do that? And God, we live so long and we work so long. Maybe you want to switch careers once or twice or 3 times or 10 times. I don't know. Maybe you want to try 10 million different hobbies. That's fine. But just know, people may perceive you, and who cares what they think of you at the end of the day, but people may think of you as being all over the place, distracted. And by the way, many people with ADHD identify with polymathy. You may feel understood because you don't fit stereotypes. You may embody contradictions of things that aren't even supposed to go together in people's minds. Like, oh, you can have a doctoral degree and tattoos and ride motorcycles and write books? Huh? That's me. That's the truth of it. So another thing about polymaths is they feel better able to understand other people because they've been in so many different pairs of shoes. They've tried so many things. They're better at connecting. They're better at understanding, but they don't feel very well understood in return. This is the burden of being a polymath. You may not be very well understood. It's why I created Polymath's Place, because as I interviewed, as I did my research, I was hearing from people how lonely this journey is, how difficult this journey is, that there was no place to go. There was no community. I'm an original anyway. How am I ever going to make community? There's a community where we all focus on being original. It's called Polymath's Place. Come, join us if you're not there already. You don't have to be like anyone else. At the same time, we're all going to be talking about what it's like to be polymathic. So you can find community on Polymath's Place on Facebook. You may feel judged. You may feel like, I can't let people know too much about what I am because they're going to judge me. So I have to let out little tiny bits of my personhood out. So people don't get too confused or don't judge me. And this self-censorship feels like burden. It feels like burden when you can't just be honest and fully yourself. So that could be difficult. Career changes can be difficult if you start all over again in a new field, for example, or organizations don't really talk about this. They don't really think about polymathic generalist type of talent. The dominant narrative in organizations is everybody should be an expert specialist. And there are downsides to that. If everybody puts blinders on, so they could be a narrow specialist like this, who's looking up and around and integrating and being creative and innovative? We need polymaths, but many organizations don't realize that. And they discriminate against people whose resumes tell a zigzag story because they'd rather just have a one-trick pony. So be prepared. Not every organization, not every manager is going to appreciate this capability right off the bat. So part of what your challenge is to do some narrative spinning, to do some self-promotion. Say, hey, I know you hired me for this. I'll do that. But did you know I could do blah, 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 blah too? And I'd like to do that stuff. So it's a challenge. You got to work through some of this in the age of specialization in organizations. Many polymaths become entrepreneurs because they don't like working for other people who micromanage them. They can't find a job that allows them to use their full skill set. They feel sort of dehumanized in specialist roles and bored. So they become entrepreneurs. They start their own thing. But that is also fraught with challenges and difficulty and failure frequently. So it's not easy being polymathic. Those are just a few of the challenges that you may face on this path. How do you become a polymath? Okay, let's get started. I'm going to be on this slide for a little bit of time. How are we doing on time? Okay. Flexibility. Okay, this is all about life design. In my view, if you want a good life, if you want to design a good life for yourself, these are some of the ethos, the values that you're going to need if you want it to be a polymathic, brilliant, beautiful life. Life is not static. It's more movie. It's more movie. It's like this. It's movie than still picture. We should evolve. We should move through phases and experiences. And what our dream life looks like may change over time. So you need to remain flexible. By the way, one of my favorite things from the Tao Te Ching, one of my favorite chapters in there, basically says that rigidity speaks of death. Things that are living are flexible. And if you get too rigid, you're getting like death. So stay flexible, try your best. Honesty. If you want a life you'll love, step one is to figure out what you don't love about your life. In my view, you have to be honest with yourself. What's working well in my life and what is not working well? And self-awareness is critical in this, and self-honesty, being brave enough to admit the truth to yourself about what's not working. It may be very inconvenient to admit what's not working in your life so that you can make it better. But you've got to be honest. That's step one. Openness. Openness to experience is huge with polymathy. It doesn't equal polymathy, but to become a polymathy, you must first be open to the broad expanse of what's in front of you to live life to the fullest. You need openness. It's important to do a sampling, to have a sampling. David Epstein in the book Range, which I highly recommend everybody read. David Epstein talks extensively about having a sampling period and how useful that is. Before you commit to anything at a young age, you should try lots of things. If you narrow down and hunker down too early, you may regret it. You may end up behind at the end of the day because you pick something too quickly and you realize you don't like it. And that's fine. You can pick things and not like them. But the more general point I'm trying to make is that sampling shouldn't just be when you're young, actually. Sampling of the life experience should be continual, in my view. It's what creates vibrancy and vitality in a life. Let life be an adventure. But you need to be open to that adventure, otherwise it won't happen. Variety and versatility. Polymaths love variety. Their brains are hungry for learning. They cannot be happy if they're narrow specialists. They need stimulation across domains, across experiences, across different types of people. Variety and newness is important to them. And by the way, it's also excellent for brain health. Barry, who is here, is an older gentleman, and he is excellent at continuing to learn in different areas. I'm sure we'll hear from him later. I want to touch on nature and nurture. So I asked the people I interviewed, do you think your polymathy is more nature or nurture? And basically it's both. Like, we're born with a certain capacity for learning, right? We're born with that capacity. We do have a genetic inheritance, which impacts our ability to learn new information. But we can also choose to expose ourselves, to expand our human experience, and to be bravely all in at life itself. So lean into the nurture. You've got your nature. It won't change, but you can control the dial of the nurture in your life and how much you nurture developing your own polymathy. Strategic thinking. Polymaths tend to be great strategic thinkers, systems thinkers. Be a strategic thinker of your own life. If you want your dream life, like, think strategically. Okay, if I want to get to B and I'm at A, how do I get there? Lifelong, life-wide learning. We've talked about this. Polymathy means many learnings. So if you want to be a polymath, you must continue to keep learning, And it's so easy with the internet, by the way. It's so easy. Integration, creativity. The power of the polymath is that they've got all these tools in their toolkits, and that lets them be super creative. And you know what? You can use this skill in your own life. Be creative in experimenting what works. Try something in your life. Move somewhere. Do you like it or not? Is it better or worse? Try a new job. Try a new hobby. Just be creative in allowing yourself to become polymathic in your life journey. Curiosity. Be curious to experience new things, meet new people, have broad experiences so you can find what you enjoy the most. This is a critical point. This is a critical point. If you want to design a life you love, you must see what's out there. What are your options? How do you know you picked the best option if you haven't tried a bunch of stuff? So being curious to try new things, meet new people, have broad experiences allows you to see the menu of your options and pick the ones you like best. If you don't have this sort of sampling, you may make choices that really weren't the best informed, that weren't tried and true. And that requires being curious. Okay, I feel like I'm taking forever for this slide. So a few more. Bravery. It isn't easy being a polymath. It is not. It requires resiliency. It requires bravery, even in the face of your fears. I already said this, but like, if you want to have a great life, you can't let fear decide everything for you. You've got to be brave. And also, lastly, use your imagination. If you want a life you haven't lived yet, you need to use your imagination. Have a vision, have fun with it. Imagine the possibilities, chat with your friends, Google about it, make a vision board, make a mission statement. There's so much fun stuff you can do. Imagineer your dream life through trial and error and just keep learning. And an important point I want to make as well, that's why this gets its own slide, is that there are two paths to polymathy. There are really two paths to life. One is just going with the flow of the people you meet and the things you come across, just the flow of things, no plan, just unintentional learning, unintentional experiences. That's going with the flow. Or you can be intentional. You can plan. You can say, I want this experience. I want that job. I want this kind of partner in my life, whatever it may be, these kind of friends, whatever it may be. You can intend, you can plan, you can design your own life, even in adulthood, no matter how old you are. And so this is important, because I don't want to give the impression when you're designing your life that it's all planning. And I know it'd be easy to assume that based on the, what we're talking about. Designing a life you love. Design, yes, please do. Please design. But leave space for emergence. Leave space for the plot twists you don't expect. Be surprised by your own life. Be vibrant by going with the flow and planning, and do that dance. That's my advice. And I heard this from a number of the people I interviewed, that chance encounters happen. Things you don't plan come to you. And be open, even if you have your plan already and it's working fine. Be open to changing your plan and going with the flow, depending on what life brings your way. All right, I'm going to be real quick on this slide. Polymaths at work. Bottom line is, polymaths help create new knowledge. They help with creativity and innovation, and they can make their teams perform better. That's all I'm going to say on this, because we're short on time. Just know polymathy is valuable in the workplace. In the old world, we were cogs in wheels. We were robots. Now, robots free us to be more human. Why does polymathy matter? Because we live in a complex world that needs complex solutions, and not a whole bunch of one-trick ponies who don't look around and think about what's going on with their blinders on. Instead, analogical thinking allows you to create newness, innovations. The technology, the influence of technology on what man with ChatGPT, this is a hot question right now. What is our role as human beings? If tech can do so much now with artificial intelligence, and in my opinion, one of the answers is, well, enjoy your life. That's part of what we're here to do. Enjoy it. Be fully human. Don't be a robot. Don't be a one-trick pony. Don't get in a cage of specialization. Let tech do the grunt work we don't want to do. Be you. Enjoy your life. And polymathy certainly can help with enjoying life, because you get to try things, you get to sample things, you get to do what you're passionate about from a state of authenticity. We still need specialists. We always are going to need specialists. If I got to go in for heart surgery or brain surgery, I'm going to a friggin' specialist. I want a specialist flying my airplane, but we don't need specialists for everything. So I really hope that human beings stop telling this narrative that everybody should be a specialist, because it's just not true. And if we keep doing that, there are innovations and insights that humanity may never get to, because we're too busy putting our blinders on. Okay. Now it is time for the breakout rooms. Now, Joe or anyone else, did you have some different questions you wanted to ask? Or should we go with like, do you identify as a polymath? How is it in your life? What do you think we should talk about in the breakout rooms?
We have a set of questions, actually. Ebony, do you have them or?
Yes, I'm about to put them in the chat now, but before we do that,
Mhm.
I know Jing had a question for you, Angela, that she wanted to start off with.
Okay,
And-
yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, my question is, yeah, it's great to see your presentation. Actually, I can identify with a lot of things. I think the curiosity is the key, you know. I wonder maybe, I have two questions. One is, you mentioned the nurture and nature, you know, I feel like a lot of them are nature. But I also wonder, part of the reason is everybody is born that way, but some people, when they grew up, they were more repressed, where others, they're more free of their nature, so they naturally become polymath. That's one question, is nature or natural. The other one is, there's a lot of advantage. At the same time, you have all this challenge of time. I realize as you get older, you realize time is only scarcity resource you have. And with all the, I have like 5 different meetings yesterday, jogging between work, like back to living idea, kids, you know, friends, business partners. I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. So how you balancing this multiple interest with limited time resource? That's the second question.
Yeah, I'll take the time management question first. So this is what I heard from the people I interviewed, is that time management is a real practical concern. If you have many different interests and you want to pursue them at the same time, it's difficult. Some people are polymathic and they can get by with less sleep. For example, that is literally something that some of them told me. And others were like, no, I really need 7 or 8 hours. And if I don't get it, I cannot function. So time management, figuring it, and I don't have the answer, like how to juggle all your interests. Like you've got to figure out a system that works for you. You know, I have a bunch of Post-it notes I put on my window. See right here? That's my to-do list. I've come up with my own systems. So when I have downtime, I can pull stuff off of there. But yeah, certainly time management. I don't really have a solution other than to say, figure out what works for you. And just know too, you don't have to do it all at once. Just because you've got all these interests, you can pace yourself. You don't have to do them all at once. Are they Post-its or are they sticky notes? That's a good question, Kimberly. I think they're Post-its. Nature versus nurture. What else do I have to say on that? I mean, polymathy means many learnings. And so in order to learn, you do need some biological component that's there, you know, and some people are better at learning. Some people have learning disabilities. So not everybody is going to be able to necessarily be a polymath, but I think most people that don't have learning disabilities, they can lean into their polymathy. They can make the choice. They can make the choice to open up their personhood and be broad. They can be their own nurture, because information is so readily available with the internet, with libraries, like even people who don't have much money, you can find information. Go to YouTube. I mean, there's so much out there to learn. And so I'm much more interested in the nurture, because we can't change the nature. We can't change what we're born with. And most people have enough intellectual capacity to learn broadly, unless they have a learning disability. So I think the nurture part is so much more important, and making the choice to self-author, to curate and create your personhood with some design and some intention, owning your own life is so important. Don't give it away to the narratives that we're sold. We're sold many narratives that are not healthy. We're sold many stories of who we should be as human beings, which dehumanizes us and makes our lives miserable if we listen to those pressures, if we listen to those stories. So I'm all about, be an outcast, be a deviant, be a bad girl or a bad boy. If that means you don't sell your soul to the devil and you get to live your life on your own rules, then be bad. If they're going to call it bad, okay, it's your life. Make up your own rules.
Great, thanks.
Thank you, Angela. If anyone else has any questions or comments, you can either type exclamation point in the chat or raise your hand in Zoom. We're going to have a short question and answer period, and it's just for questions before we go into the breakout rooms. After we go into the breakout rooms, we're going to come back and we're going to have a larger question and answer period. So if anybody just has any quick questions or comments, you can type exclamation point in chat.
I think Sean raised his hand.
Yeah.
Charlie.
Okay. Sean. Oh wait, I have to unmute people. Joe, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I do actually just want to follow up on just a quick question that we recently had a professor from who wrote the book The Design Way that we covered here at 52 Living Ideas, and he talked about it's essential that you are a polymath if you're going to be a design thinker or a designer. And one of the things that he talked about, he said, he's done a lot of reading on polymathy. He says, well, it's not a generalist, nor is it a specialist. Obviously it's not specialist, but how do you distinguish between a generalist and a polymath? He had a graph. It was interesting. Like, on the y-axis was a generalist, and on the x-axis was a specialist, and somewhere in between is a polymath. So, like, how do you distinguish between those two? I think that's an important distinction to make.
Yeah, I agree. I think that you can be a generalist without being a polymath. You can't be a polymath without being a generalist, though. Polymath is an excellent, deep, experienced, expert generalist in multiple domains. So I would think of it like a generalist is sort of a precursor to becoming a strong polymath. A generalist can be polymathic, is polymathic as an adjective, but to be like a polymath, generalist does not describe the depth of expertise that is required to be called a polymath. I think a generalist has skills in multiple areas, but maybe none that are very deep. And a polymath has deep areas of expertise in multiple areas and some level of achievement. That's what's associated with the word polymath. Hopefully
thank you for that distinction. It does, very much so. So thank you for that distinction.
Sure.
All right, so up next I have Sean, followed by Charlie, and then Barry. Sean, you're up.
Yes. I think, okay, a polymath sometimes, maybe because of my personality, I don't know how you deal with it. Maybe because you know a lot of things and you become very opinionated, you like to talk. I sometimes people think you're show off, okay? Like I have a 2 graduate degree, computer science, statistics. I'm a good singer. I'm a good calligraphy. I write a very decent poem, and I'm a handyman. I can fix everything. But I do feel like I'm shallow. That I'm very opinionated. Always, something happen. I always give an opinion. Sometimes even get into trouble. Like people think you like to show up. And secondly, is that true?
This is one of the challenges I heard from people I interviewed and it's why they tend to not really share too much, because people will think they're lying, they're bragging, they're exaggerating, they're arrogant. I don't like them. Go away. You're just trying to make yourself look better than me. So you can't even really be honest because other people are insecure. If they had their own strengths and talents, maybe they wouldn't be so threatened by yours. Why can't we all just be honest about what we're good at and not good at? That's how I'd rather live my life personally. Let's just be honest about what we're good at or not and help each other. But it's other people's insecurities. One of my mentors.
And also I think like say I'm just a programmer, okay? I'm not say that good. Maybe because you know too much. However, whatever, it's better to focus on one area, right? You're extremely good at one thing. Inside, you're good at everything. That's what. Well, at my age, that I feel like maybe when I was young, I should focus on one area. Maybe I probably doing even better than what I'm doing now. I don't know.
You never know. I mean, there are advantages to being a specialist. Like if you're a brain surgeon or a heart surgeon, like, yeah, it makes sense to specialize deeply enough. Although, you know, even in the medical field, there may be benefits to learning about other parts of the human physiology too, because sometimes doctors will just see problems through their lens. Oh, I'm a cardiologist. I just see heart problems. Oh, I'm a cancer doctor. I just see cancer. Like people get stuck in their lenses and they're blind sometimes to the truth because they haven't broadened their own viewpoint. There is one of my mentors, Yasuhiko Genku Kimura, who has done quite a few 52 Living Ideas sessions. He has called something the conspiracy for mediocrity. Our world is not all benevolent. Our world is not perfect. The people here are not, they're not gods. Like we're human beings, we're flawed. We don't get it all right all the time. And so people who don't have their shit together, you know, who aren't brave, who aren't curious, who aren't open, may be threatened by your living your own life to the fullest. So there's that. The other thing I want to say is if you specialized too early at a young age, that can make you, it can go two ways. It can make you really the best in your field. You know, Tiger Woods started golfing when he was like 3 or something, and now look at him, you know what I mean? But it can also backfire if the thing you pick is not a good match. Because then you spend all these years studying the violin or something, and then you realize, I hate the violin. My parents picked this. I didn't even get to pick it. I didn't even get to see what my options were. And now I've spent decades of my life on the violin. Like, well, that's not good either. You've got to decide when you've had enough sampling and when you can make your choices. And are you going to be a specialist, or are you going to be polymathic in your approach to work and life and whatever it may be in your, you know, where you have to make decisions? I prefer to have a broad, full human experience. So I choose to be polymathic. Other people might not want that path. That's okay. We can be different. We should be different. Being different is the key to our human evolution, actually. God, I could talk about so many things, and there are other people raising their hands too. I think I better go to the next question.
Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, I have Charlie, followed by Barry, and then Jean. Charlie, you need to unmute.
Okay, yeah, anyway, I was surprised by your use of the word expression, rather, of getting your shit together. So I quickly looked it up on Google Ngram, and it started out in 1965, which is when I was using it, you know, as a high school graduate. And but according to Google Ngram, it has gone straight up in terms of usage. So I I was surprised that a young person like you would still be using that expression. But anyway, I think of myself as a philosophical journalist, and basically what I mean by that is any question that is anybody who has something to say that is related to a basic philosophical question, like what is reality, what is beauty, what is good, that sort of thing. I will be interested in listening to that. Okay, so that's kind of how I, you know, how I understand my polymathy. But there's one of the things that I'm really interested in is the relationship between personality and various other endeavors, and polymathy is one of them. And you mentioned openness to experience, and so my question is polymathy normally distributed on openness to experience, and if so, what is its mean and standard deviation?
What does its mean in standard deviation? I don't know. I don't know. All I know is that openness to experience, okay, is heavily studied in the literature. It's measurable. It's part of the big 5 personality traits with extroversion and agreeableness and neuroticism and whatever the one is. I don't know the standard deviation. There's so much, by the way, that has not been studied with my doctoral dissertation was the first ever on the subject in 2018. There's
Right.
been very little study of this. So in terms of actual data, I don't know. We don't know. Humanity doesn't know. We haven't studied it enough.
Is there a issue with regards to getting an unbiased sample of such people? Because I think that would be one of the difficulties of trying to do a statistical analysis of polymathy is how do you find people?
How do you find people? Yeah, so I did a qualitative study precisely because of this. I had qualitative requirements to participate in my research that was established by a panel of doctorate holding academics and myself. This is hard. This is hard stuff. We don't have a very good measure. We don't have an assessment. We don't have a certifying body. These are things that need to be done still.
Yeah.
And I hope to be part of all of those things moving forward. But there's just, I can tell you're a real like scholarly academic quantitative proof, let's get the data and let's roll up our sleeves and let's figure this out. But there's so much of that that just doesn't exist with polymathy because very few people talk about it. And most of the people who talk about it with dead people from history.
Yeah.
And they don't make it accessible for current day. And we need it in current day. It enriches our lives and enriches our problem solving. It makes the world a better place. We need variety. We don't all have to be narrow specialists. And so, but yeah, there's just, I'm sorry, I don't have a good answer because we just don't have enough data and there's so much additional work that needs to be done.
Yeah, one of the things I see as
Charlie?
well, okay, fine.
Sorry, yeah, I hate to
Really
interrupt,
quick,
but
okay, I'll take just 1 minute, okay. Is I see a niche for polymaths in academia for being people who can introduce different specialties that have become siloed and have kind of become moribund or infertile, I guess, in terms of their creative productivity, and so that the interdisciplinary research is really needed, but a lot of people aren't willing to do it because it's because of a fear of Dunning-Kruger, and it's sad. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, and academia would be very hostile actually to polymathic people because specialization is hyper specialization even is very prized in academia. In fact, I feel like a real rebel that I wrote a doctoral level. I became hyper specialized in not being hyper specialized. It was an act of rebellion for me to get a doctoral degree and to write about polymathy for my doctoral dissertation. Academia is for, like, it should be. We should have interdisciplinary studies. I wish our universities were different. I am a critiquer of academia and that whole institution. It needs to change. We're creating hyper specialists over and over and over again, and our world is getting more and more complex. What are we doing? Why is a terminal degree? Why are the most educated among us, the doctors, not just medical doctors, but doctoral level degree holders? Why do we associate doctoral degrees with hyper specialization? Why don't we have terminal degree holders who are trained and prepared to be broad, versatile problem solvers in our complex world? This is a problem. It's a real problem. Sorry, I could go on a whole rant about academia. I think
thank you, Charlie. Up next, I have Barry, Jing, Jeff, and Joe.
Good evening from Sherwood, Oregon. Hi, everybody. I gave a presentation to this august group about a year ago, maybe, and called Be a Super Ager by Mastering the Power Flow of Your Mind. And in that presentation, I said there were studies, and there is at Northwestern University, Rogowski, who's become a specialist in superagers, and there's certain characteristics of their brain and their lifestyle that makes them live longer and healthier. They have the brain of a 40 or 50-year-old, and they're 80, 90 years old, and I will turn 81 this year. Hallelujah. And so what I discovered in joining the Polymath group, that far as my analysis goes, that superagers are all polymaths, and polymaths are all superagers. So I contend this is more important whether you make more money and whether you're a successful entrepreneur. This is life or death. Being a polymath is essential to living a long health span, lifespan, and a happy life. I know it is in my case. And when my wife died 8 years ago, I had no choice but to become a polymath, or I would have gone down the rabbit hole of a power system engineering, and it was not an engineering problem. So instead of going down a rabbit hole, I dug a tunnel from being an engineer to being a polymath. And when I did that, I found that I could use a metaphor. And I said in my presentation that I was a power engineer at Bonneville Power, and the Bonneville Dam is the first dam they built on the Columbia River. And I treated my emotions as the the water behind the dam, and I treated the generator as my thoughts, and I treated my nervous system as a transmission system, and the loads as my activities and accomplishments. And when I did that, I came up with a poem, and I'll just leave this with you. And if you look behind me, you can see my painting that Angela wants to buy. And that's a painting where it's got I'll just have to walk over here so you can see it. So can you see it now?
Yep.
Okay. So the painting is one I made over near Shampooey Park here in Oregon. And it's a trail. And one goes one way and one goes the other. The trail has a sign and it says, be creative or be conformity. And the conformity guy is on the right, and he's old and frail because conformity leads to deformity. Conformity leads to just a brain that just is tunnel vision, I guess is the best way to explain it. But if you have the ability to connect ideas, connect concepts, connect theories, then you have this person on the left. And then that pathway connects things in the brain. And one of the main ways you prevent Alzheimer's is have many connections in your brain. They found with superagers that when they, even though they did not have the symptoms of dementia, they did an autopsy on their brain, and they found there were the amyloid tangles, just like, but the solution was they had so many paths that they go around those roadblocks in their brain. And I think that's true in your behavior. And I'll just leave you with my poem. My poem says, once I produced the grapes of math, because I was an engineer, that became the grapes of wrath, because I'm an empath and I absorb other people's feelings and I'm highly sensitive. So I chose the path of a polymath. So that allows me to go around not only in my brain, but in my behavior, in my choices. I see multiple choices to every problem. And I have the ability to connect things that other people, I guess, don't think about. For example, so I'll just conclude with this. When I was confronted with the issues of being a caregiver of my wife, and she was on dialysis, and I felt the needle stick her arm, and I was angry because they were hurting her and they were hurting me. So my solution was to go out in the park, do yoga, do Tai Chi, and start writing poetry and painting. And this made me more in tune to nature than into the natural world and nature rather than human nature. And I became gone from what I call a power system to engineer to an ecosystem engineer. And so that ability to connect different ways of doing things is essential to the kind of world we have that is dominated by technology. I guarantee you that. So Angela is a prophet. And she is Noah standing up there. You get on the Ark of Polymath, or you're going to drown with the rest of the specialists that aren't able to adapt to the changing world we live in. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Barry. I'd like to respond. First of all, I love that. I love to see you, Barry. I love getting a Barry poem, a Barry painting. Like these are it's so fun. And it's been so fun to have like someone in their 80s in Polymaths place being active. Like, I just love it. You know, I myself, it might surprise you guys, but I'm in my early 40s. And I often hear from people like, what? You're in your 40s? Well, yeah, I am. And you know what? For me, I've wondered this. I've always been a passionate person. Like I'm vibrant. I want to have a good life. I want to do it all. I want to travel. I want to do hobbies. I want to have the friends. I want to have the career. I want to have the degrees. Like I just want to live my life to the fullest. And I think that sense of vibrancy may have slowed down my aging. I don't know. It's just a theory. I think Barry would agree. All right, let's go to the next question.
Okay, up next. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
Sure, go ahead.
Up next, we have Jing, then Jeff, then Kimberly, then Joe.
Yeah, so thanks, Angela. So I want to share is, I think even in medical field, you mentioned you want the specialist. Actually, because of my son's allergy, I studied a lot of health related issue, and I found because the Western doctor, they're so specialized. The body is organic, so they can't really heal you. They can just treat whatever symptom you have. That's why a lot of people go to naturopaths, which is more integrated way of medicine, more like Chinese medicine, because your whole body is connected. Like my son have eczema, and they just gave you a steroid to get rid of the symptom, but it's actually related to your gut. If you don't heal the gut, that's a problem. So we have seen so many skin specialists and never were able to cure. So I did so many research, end up taking him to a naturopath doctor to take supplement and do this test. So that's another thing, specialists, even for medical, they don't really heal you because it's all organic. Like Barry mentioned, body is organic. The whole nature is organic. It's not like, especially people don't see the big picture, it doesn't help. Another good news I want to share is I did the school tour for my son, and I noticed that Northeastern school, they create all this new dual major like computer science and digital music, computer science and philosophy, computer science and media art. I think it's happening. Some school, they sense that, you can't just develop one part of your brain. That's why, the design we mentioned, a lot of architect are polymaths because we usually, the technology and art, we develop two parts of the brain, both technical, logical, and imaginative. I think that make you more polymath. And like Barry mentioned too, he's the engineering, then he get more into the art, then he become more polymath. I think the secret is the both part of your brain, then make more connections, logic and your feeling. So that's make us more human. That's maybe how we beat AI.
Yeah, there's nothing more exciting too than like making a new connection that is new and you're like, wow, that was genius and that was so smart. And like, it's because of the broad thinking and the more connections that you're able to do that. And it's such a good feeling. I want to say too, there is nothing worse than having a medical issue and going to a bunch of narrow specialists who all just tell you, oh, it's through my specialized lens. That's what your problem is. And there's, the medical field the medical field is not good at diagnosis if you're seeing specialists. Treatment from a specialist, once you've got a right diagnosis, could be great. But if you have a mystery issue going on and you're seeing a bunch of specialists, man, that is one way to just not get it properly treated because they're just seeing it through their little, their lens, their paradigm. And that may not be the root cause. They're just treating symptoms. So it is a problem in the medical field for sure too. Yeah. All right.
Thank you, Jing. Up next, I have Jeff, Kimberly, and Joe.
I think Kimberly was before me, so maybe I should let her start.
Actually, you typed exclamation point in the chat, Jeff, so
Okay.
you're first.
All right. Okay, good. So I want to ask you a trick question.
Okay.
What's the single most important thing to know to take a polymath orientation? And I'm not expecting you to answer. It's a trick question. And it's a trick because of this. I happen to live, as part of my work, working with people who are seeking to address situations that are complex beyond imagination, where nobody really knows exactly the right thing to do. And the situation is changing so fast, and the stakes are sometimes really high. And asking questions with an orientation that there's one right answer is the definition of rigidity that's death. But you'd be amazed how many times, even in this conversation right here among us, we have asked and answered the question, what is the one right fill in the blank? And it's just fascinating. I think that there's got to be something in the human condition that carries this orientation. And where we're even sort of respected for having a one right answer, without starting off with, there's me as an individual, and there's my experiences and my learning and what I've chosen to keep from my learning and draw from my experiences. And there's my relationships with other people, and every one of them is unique in the experiences of their life and what they've learned and what they've chosen to learn from their experiences. And there's a context that is there for me, and a context that is there for other people, given the world we live in and the culture and the situations we're in. And to some extent, there's a common context where we're all on this spaceship Earth together, or maybe we see ourselves as all within one city or one country. There are our relationships with each other, the dimension of trust and confidence that we have in each other. And then there is the extent to which it even occurs to us that at least 10% of whatever we think we know is probably wrong. Even that we're absolutely convinced, based on incontrovertible evidence and experience that has taught us ABC. I know personally, maybe one of you is better than me, but I know personally, I'm at least 10% wrong. And I know because over the last 40 years, I had changed my mind on unbelievably complicated, consequential things where I thought I really knew the answer. And now I don't think that anymore. I think of it differently. It's remarkable to me, the extent to which I have changed my mind about things, whether it's philosophy or religion and the meaning of life, or whether it's what's true about relationships, or what's the most important way to make a decision, or on and on, politically, government, economics, business, mission, changing the world. In every one of those areas, which are super important to me, I have changed my mind incredibly on over the last several decades. Here's the problem. I can accept that I'm at least 10%, and just between us, more like 50% wrong on just about everything that I think I know is true. Here's the problem. I don't know which 10% it is. I'm stuck with that. Now, I actually believe that each of you is also not right about everything that you think is true, that you might be passionately, expressing at this moment with great confidence about what is true. I'm sure that fast forward to 2 or 3 decades from now, and you'll say, well, I think about that a little differently now. And so this idea of, number one, being able, that real curiosity, at least for me, is in part born from a firm appreciation and acceptance that whatever I passionately think is true might be true, very, very well might be true, and it might be not, and it might not be, at least part of it might not be true. And I find the conversations with others most productive when they're willing to share that orientation. Because if they won't give it up, that theirs is the right answer and there's nothing that could happen that could change it, well, the conversation gets a little circular and a little boring after a while. So hence what I wrote here. What's the significance of welcoming and embracing diverse perspectives? And I think this is a really big deal these days, where we talk about we live in an age of significant difference and significant arguments and significant conflicting opinions. What is the significance of welcoming and embracing perspectives that just feel not right to us, and genuinely appreciating that different vantage points, including different experiences people have had and what they chose to learn from those experiences, are all part of an adequately complex answer to every polymathic question. And then this orientation of intellectual humility. I know what I know. Well, actually, I know what I think I know. I know what I don't know. Well, actually, I don't think I know that, but I know I might even know more about that than I know. And I don't know what I don't know, which, and just because I don't know that I don't know it doesn't mean it can't hurt me. I've already experienced that it can. So I'll leave it there. But I think that this orientation to what's the one most important thing is a really deeply embedded trick in the asking of questions and the pursuit of knowledge and what we call truth, but is really my truth, not really the truth, regarding many, many consequential matters across a wide spectrum of thought.
Thank you, Jeff. That was beautiful. And I completely agree with everything you said. Where do I start in my response? And I want to be sensitive to time too, but I absolutely agree. There are many truths that may exist. Even things that seem like they don't go together may both be true. And we should welcome disagreement with one another. We should welcome debate. We shouldn't get so tied to our perspectives, because it's disagreeing and dabbling with ideas that we can find the best solutions, the most true for now. Diversity of thought is so important. In fact, diversity of thought, polymaths are naturally better at diversity of thought. They are intrapersonal diverse. They have diversity within their own selves. Within one human being, you can have diverse, like your gut microbiome can even be diverse. Your personhood, your thoughts can be diverse. It's so important. One of the frameworks I've come up with was like knowers versus learners. And there are some places in our life where there are right and wrong answers. Like 2 + 2 does equal 4. I'm sorry, there is a correct answer. But so much of our human experience is not quantitative in nature. People, we're messy. And so we can't always know. It's important to keep this learning. That's another reason why polymathy and that orientation to learning and to being open to changing and evolving and morphing and becoming a new version of you, surprising yourself with how you change over your lifespan. That is so important. Being a learner as much as possible. Being able to learn, unlearn, and relearn is important. Not just the learning, the unlearning and the relearning might be even more important. That sort of intellectual agility and flexibility and versatility and ambidexterity, that is so important to be able to live a full, truthful, good, authentic life and to be able to make the world a better place around you, not being so rigid. Charles Darwin, I'm going to get
Angela, and just offer you one thing. There's just something about this right and wrong question. There's something about being right and being wrong that is a really seductive thing. It's not easy to escape. We want to be right. And, and assume there's only one right. And I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it is really a deeply embedded thing in human thought. I'm right and you're not.
Do you think that's,
And
do you think it's ego? What is that?
pardon me?
Do you think it's ego? Like, what is this desire we have to be right?
Honestly, I don't know what it is. Honestly, that's my honest answer. I don't know what.
I want to
This
chime
is-
in. Yeah, if it's okay. So I read the book, actually they mentioned the reason people are so don't want to be wrong because it's kind of like in our brain, like our innate brain. If we're wrong, our concept understand the world is wrong. Our safety is threatened. That's why people never admit they're wrong, because then you feel your whole existence is threatened. And you have this, I found that book mentioned that. I thought, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Why people never admit they're wrong. Because if you admit you're wrong, then you understand the world is wrong. Then your whole safety of your existence is threatened somehow. Then you have this, your snake brain will not allow you to do that.
It definitely takes courage. It takes confidence to say, I was wrong. And by the way, polymathic people, in my view, tend to be a bit more confident. So it kind of goes in line with being able to say, oh, yeah, I was wrong about that. I'm not saying all polymaths are going to be able to admit that they were wrong, but I think there may be some overlap there. I also wanted to say real quick, Charles Darwin said this quote. He was like, it's basically not the fittest of the species that survive. It's the most adaptable to change. And nature, by the way, in my view, nature loves diversity. If you have a species that is all the same, and then that trait that they all have becomes undesirable, the whole species goes down. We need diversity. In fact, it's my view, I alluded to this earlier, it's my view that polymathy is human evolution in action. There are, according to a book called The Phenomenon of Man, which I agree with, the author argued that there are two keys to evolution in any species. One is increased individuation. They're not all copies. They got diversity in the gene pool. That's what polymathy does. It makes us all more original. So therefore, we strengthen our species with what we know and what we can bring to the table, what we think we know, before we unlearn it and relearn it and change our minds. It's that we are different that strengthens our species. And the other thing that you see with human or with any species evolution is increased individuation and increased cooperation between those divergent parts. So they work as a complete, robust set, a hive mind. And that's what polymathy accomplishes too. It builds the bridges. It helps us understand. It helps us find common ground. It makes us a more holistic collective whole. To me, being polymathic isn't just for fun. It's not just to do better work. It's not just to enjoy our lives a bit more. It is the impulse of evolution at work. Polymathy is evolution taking place. All right, I'm going to stop ranting. I think there's more questions.
Thank you, Angela, and thank you, Jeff. Up next, we have Kimberly. And then I know I see two other people that want to speak, but we're going to do the breakout rooms, and then we're going to come back and do takeaways and more questions. So after Kimberly, we're going to go into the breakout rooms.
Okay, Barry and Jeff blew me away, so I don't really have much to say other than I was gonna comment because one of my best friends, I'm a former 3M person, and Art Fry, who's the Post-it note inventor, he's like one of my best friends, and he's a polymath. He didn't even know what a polymath was. I called him tonight. He's like 90 years old. And I told him, I go, Art, you're a polymath. I go, you should come on this call. But then, he has so many interests. He has everything else going on. So I told him, I go, well, if they record it, I'll send it to you. But I just want to say that what Angela was saying, that people just, I don't know, people are born as polymaths or they just gravitate toward it. It's just like, it's just a way of life. That's what it is. It's a way of life. It's a
Yeah.
way of life,
Choice.
So, yeah. So I'll let you guys get on to the breakout groups. So,
Angela, did you want to respond before we go into breakout rooms?
Kimberly, I agree. I agree. I think, we're born these like helpless little creatures with just potential. We're like a chalkboard waiting to be written on. And some of us may have the learnability is a way to say it, the ability to learn, to memorize, to think, to actually, what's the word I'm looking for? Cogitate? No, I don't know. To think, the act of thinking. Some of us may have that skill a little bit better than others, but at the end of the day, if you're able to learn, if you're able to think, if you're able to remember, we can all lean into our polymathy. It's a choice. It's a choice. And I think, although it's not an easy choice to make, it's also a very natural choice. This, in my view, is the natural way of being a human being. We're not meant to be robots. We're not meant to be cogs in wheels. We were made to be that way because it was more efficient for the society. And we got dehumanized in that. There's so much dehumanization that takes place when you take these complex sentient beings that we are, and you try to make them small and constricted and narrow. That is unnatural, if you ask me. Anyway, all right, Evanique, back to you.
Thank you, Angela. So now we're going to go into breakout rooms. I'm going to set those up. So that's going to take like a minute. The rooms will be led by Jing, Joe, and myself. We will be in the breakout rooms for a 20-minute period, and then we will come back together and we will do questions and takeaways. The questions I'm going to put in now. So question number 1 is, what approach would you take in becoming a polymath? Number 2, why do you think it is important to become a polymath? And question number 3, are we all natural polymaths? So that's in the chat. All right, so I'm looking, okay, so everybody's back in. So we're gonna start with the questions and or comments. If you have a question and or comment, you can type exclamation point in chat or raise your hand in Zoom. Laura had a really good question, and I told her I would remind her to ask it in the main room, which was about education. So Laura, I'm going to let you take it away first.
Okay, my question, we were talking about children being born with natural curiosity. And my question was, natural curiosity, does it have to be nurtured? Do your parents have to work with you as a child from birth on, with reading and, helping them to develop all the skills that lead them to being able to be a polymath? So does it have to be cultivated?
Yeah. So this came up in my interviews. And the answer is, you can have a really supportive upbringing with wonderful parents who help take you to lessons and nurture your curiosity and help shape you and expose you to all these fun things. And you can become a polymath that way. Or you can have a house full of trauma and want to take it out of it and realize, oh, if I get lots of tools in my toolkit, I'll be better off on my own. And you can have a very dysfunctional childhood and still become a polymath because it's a personal choice. It's a personal choice to learn. You can get it on a silver platter or you can get it under duress. Either way, you can become a polymath.
Thank you, Angela. Up next, I have Jing.
Yeah, so we have a heated discussion in our room because I think one person is more not quite agree. I think the other person is more polymath. Anyway, my question or my observation is, I think today it seems the left brain. Oh, Charlie bring a very good point. He said psychology study shows people mainly function on the left brain, like to put things in a box. And people, thinking more on the right brain, they like to make connections, more organic. So I think currently our society is such a chaos, and the loss of humanity. I think part of the reason because the left brain people kind of dominate the world with technology, science, and they're rewarded financially, have more power. And then the people more creative is the right brain, they're repressed. So they don't have much power. And they think that's maybe the reason we are in it's like a body, it's society like a human body. And you're like, so that's why we have so many illness in this society, psychological problem, gunshot, all this chaotic, because it's not balanced. It's like a health. It's not connect. You're in this stage of unhealthy stage of society. I think polymath, with more developed of the right brain will bring us to the balance. In Chinese, yin and yang, there's a lot of yang, not yin, to make the society healthier, holistic, healthier. Anyway, that's my observation.
Thank you, Jing. Angela, do you want to respond?
I think we do need balance, and the right brain, left brain thing. Yeah, I think people may be more dominant or whatever. I mean, some people say, oh, the right brain, left brain thing, that's like not really accurate or whatever. And then some people are like, yeah, it is. I don't know what to think of it. I think some people, we think differently, but it is more useful and more productive if we can be open-minded, make more connections, and let all the truths that are true be true, and disagree and find the best one to rise to the top, like, for sure. All right, I think that's all I'm going to say on that.
Thank you. Up next, I have Charlie.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, if you haven't heard of this guy before, his name is Ian McGilchrist. Okay, I-A-I-N. So it's an unusual spelling for Ian. And then McGilchrist is M-C-G-I-L, and then like Christ, Jesus, McGilchrist. And he's a psychiatrist, and he's developed this whole theory of brain function that is completely different than the stuff that happened because of Roger Sperry's looking at split brain patients because of the brainstorms. The word is just escaping me right now. But there's this is a whole new developing thing, and there's people in psychoanalysis, Dan Siegel and Alan Shore are examples of people who are taking these ideas, and I think it's really important that people understand that this idea of what McGilchrist talks about with left brain capture. Anyway, I recommend you very strongly you check him out, because he's a really interesting guy, and it might be useful in your own research and how you understand polymathy. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that.
Angela, did you want to respond?
I just took some notes. Thank you for those recommendations. I've heard of Ian McGilchrist. I've got to look into his stuff some more. So thank you. I will do that.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions or comments? Natasha.
Hey, yeah, so in our room, there was one person, he's not here anymore. He bailed afterwards. But he was kind of, I think, making the argument that being polymathic might not necessarily be a good thing for everybody. And I don't think you disagree with that, right, Angela? I think you agree that some people need to be specialists, but I think he was really saying that, like, we don't have enough evidence to say that our society needs to lean more towards being polymathic. And I can agree with him on that. I think it's hard to know what we need, but just based upon how we're at a standstill in a lot of scientific and technological, well, not so much technological, but we're about to hit a standstill with technological progress. It would suggest that we need more creativity, and polymathy would probably be a good source for that. So just kind of wondering what your thoughts were about that.
Yeah, I don't think it's that we just need more polymaths for the sake of polymaths. What we need is original, creative, innovative thought to solve the complex problems of our very fucked up time. You know what I mean? Like, we can't solve the problem, our complex problems, with simple solutions. We need complexity to meet the complexity of our problems. We need complex solutions. The complexity theory says actually that the more complex the problem is, the more complex the solution naturally has to be. And if you're dealing with a bunch of narrow specialists and you expect complex solutions, you're not going to get it, in my opinion. We need more systems thinking, holistic thinking, root cause analysis, anticipating the domino effect of things before we get there. Like, these are the kinds of things that need systems thinking, polymath. By the way, systems thinking is like at the macro level. The meso level is like, I'd call it organizational agility, exploiting what you're good at and exploring what you can bring in to stay competitive. That's the organizational level. And at the personal micro level, it's polymathy. So if you're looking for systems thinking, if you're looking for creativity and innovation, in my view, you absolutely do need polymaths, because within single disciplines, where the domain of the narrow specialists, many innovations have already occurred. And the amount of work it takes to squeeze a little bit more innovation out of a single silo is hard, because we've already put so much effort into, learning what we can about these different domains and these different fields. Where the payoffs come with creativity and innovation is at the intersection of multiple disciplines. So I feel like we do need polymaths, but it's not just because polymaths, I don't know, because we need variety or something. We need polymaths because of the way they think, their approach to problem solving and the diversity it brings to our species by having more diverse individuals. Like, it's one thing to have a diverse group of people solving problems. It's another to have individuals who are themselves highly diverse. There's even, this is like such a minor thing of me to mention, but I sometimes do say it. When you're problem solving in a group, that group must necessarily communicate through language. I can't read your mind and you can't read mine. So we got to use language. And you know what language is? A roadblock. It's a roadblock. Things get lost in translation. You speak a neuroscientist language and I speak a psychology language, and they're a little different. We need different perspectives, and things get lost in translation. So there's a benefit to having a one person who can have sparks of pre-verbal insight into issues that are well informed and systems thinking and polymathic, because they're not dependent on language. And there are people who have come up with insights and innovation, a flash of insight that's well informed by a broad, toolkit. And so there's a disadvantage to depending on specialists to collaborate in a group, because they must go through language, and language isn't like the map is not the territory. Language is just a symbol, and things get lost. So there is some advantage to having individual polymaths positioned to help contribute to problem solving in our world. And we have such problems: global warming, pandemic, civil unrest, political problems, economic problems, and they're not going to even be solved within a single domain either. The nature of our problems nowadays it's really complex.
So
Anyway.
Angela, can I ask you, like, to follow up on that? Like, what do you mean by polymaths aren't necessarily using language, or they're pre-verbal, or what? Yeah, what do you mean?
Yeah, so actually Robert Root Bernstein, who I consider the father of polymathy studies, he and I had a conversation about this one day because he was telling me how he had learned about a problem and he had told his colleagues, like, I just need to go think by myself about this. And the solution, like, he could just see it. The solution just came to him. Like, it wasn't like he was thinking in words in his head, like his brain had some sort of cognition that was pre-verbal, where he saw the solution. I don't know if it was instinct, if it was an image. I think it was an image. I think, if I remember correctly, he like saw it in his own mind. And it wasn't dependent on language or a group. And if it's true that people can have precognitive flashes of insight to solve problems, it's one thing to get that flash of insight from a narrow specialist. It's another to get that flash of insight from someone who's had broader exposure, because that flash of insight may be much more well-informed, you know?
Mhm.
So anyway, hopefully that helps. Good to see you here.
I muted myself. Thank you, Natasha. Up next, I have Penny, then Joe, then Jeff, and then Laura. Penny, you're up.
Okay, well, I think I enjoyed this really much. I think it's really very interesting. One of the things I see, and I agree, I mean, I think this polymathic individuals, I could see that can be really useful to society. But then it seems to me that since we're oriented in the specialist silos, that people tend to denigrate people who come up with other ideas if they say, oh yeah, but you're not an expert. What do you know about this?
Mm-hmm.
That they only want to accept solutions from people that they think are authorities.
Yes.
I mean, have you run into this, and how can we address this?
Oh yeah, like in academia, for example, if you become a multidisciplinary scholar, it's harder. It's a harder road. You're much better off in certain industries with the way things are right now to just be hyper specialized. To me, it's like we need to catch up. Like, the times haven't quite caught up. Like, we're not in the 1950s anymore and Ford's assembly line, and we're in a different time that's much messier and more complex and more difficult. So we need more complex people, and the way you get that is you get people who have more broad experiences, and they aren't made to be cogs in wheels quite as much. But yeah, it is a problem, and it's one that I've written a book. I had a contract with the publisher, and then I was like, let me get out of that and try to get a better one. But I've written a whole book that's geared towards hiring managers, HR professionals, business executives, and leaders to try to get them to just think rationally about this. Some roles are appropriate for specialists and some are really not. And we've got to figure out that match appropriately. Otherwise, you're putting round, pegs in square holes, and it's not good for the organization, and it's also not good for the employees. So getting that match right, knowers versus learners. You want knowers in finance. You want learners in, I don't know, IT, we got to think in more nuanced ways about the right match, and also the pipeline, the educational system. What we're talking about, education and organizations, it makes up our society. We need to be smarter about how we're thinking about these issues, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Penny. Up next, I have Joe, followed by Jeff and Laura.
Yeah, something occurred to me actually while you were talking about the use of language in polymath, because I think that's something that I'd actually had a conversation with somebody that's presented here in the past as well, Todd Gill, and he said, the ability, he comes up with his own language that, and it's it's based on a competitive engineering book. However, there's a distinction of how you would speak to maybe somebody that has an MBA or in a business operations versus how an engineer may look at outcomes, or how they may talk about I'm trying to think off the top of my head some of the distinctions between the two, but nonetheless, the distinctions between those two disciplines, between multiple disciplines, and understanding how to communicate to different people across different specialties is critical, I think, in becoming a polymath, and because you have to understand their perspective and how they actually communicate in order to get everybody on the same page. So I found that to be actually a pretty interesting language as far as being polymathic, and understanding the language of each discipline is an interesting perspective.
Yeah, because different disciplines really do have different lexicons. And, people who have been in different domains, who can speak those multiple professional languages, are actually at a really good position, not only to innovate, but also to manage diverse teams. So if you're a manager over finance, IT, HR, whatever it may be, like if you know those roles because you've been on the front lines before, obviously you're better positioned to manage that team, as opposed to you've been a narrow specialist who rose through the ranks to become an executive, and you only speak finance, but you're trying to manage a larger group. Not going to work so great. The other thing too is, like, speaking of language, it's so meta. Literally different languages, Spanish, Japanese, Chinese, Korean, like whatever the languages may be, there are literally different concepts, different words. We're so language dependent. It's actually made me want to play around with how much could I think without using language? What is possible in the human brain to think without language? We're so language dependent. But they're literally, there are concepts. One of my closest friends is Japanese, another one is Argentinian, and she speaks Spanish. And there are words that they have words for things that we don't have in English. We're so language dependent. And it limits us. It also creates opportunity and potential when we have the right lexicon. But if we're dependent upon language in groups, it is a limiting factor. And that's why polymathy within an individual can be helpful, because you're not quite as dependent on language to have insight.
Thank you, Joe. Up next, I have Jeff, followed by Laura.
So Angela, I want to play I Wonder If for a moment.
Okay.
Okay. So, and because my experience with things like this is sometimes they're a lot easier to talk about than they are to do. And so I'm just going to, just for the sake of having something to ground it, I'm going to offer, a fairly significant challenge, which may actually be an opportunity, which is the fact that we have a warming planet. And so to some extent, what I would want if it was my job to come up with a way to really change the world regarding global warming, I would definitely want unbelievably educated and experienced scientists. I would want the best researchers on the planet. I would want people who are phenomenally good at inventing things. The ability to, whether it's recombinant innovation, taking things that exist and putting them together in new ways, or actually inventing new stuff. I would really want people who have that orientation and experience. I'd want politicians, people who really have experience at not only navigating internal to their own sovereign nations, what it takes to organize public opinion and support for what it's going to take to actually do whatever the scientists and the inventors, you know, come up with, but then really sustain that. And then those politicians actually have to be enormously skilled and oriented to being able to work successfully in partnership with other nations. Because it's not just their nation, it's actually, you know, a global partnership of politicians here. And when you look at Davos, or you look at the G20, or you look at whatever, and you see, you know, you look at NATO, you look at whatever, you say, wow, you know, that's a pretty big challenge, you know, to pull that off. I'd want economists who can really look at how this is going to work financially in countries and between countries, and these things that we get, you know, invented. They actually, if they're enormously, overwhelmingly expensive, you know, that might not really work. You know, we might not really be able to scale that up just because we can't afford it. And so people who can finance it in a way that not only the startup of it, but, you know, sustaining it over time. And then someone's going to have to manufacture this stuff, right? Whatever it is, you know? And so just the ability to organize and do the manufacturing in a way that is efficient and effective and high enough quality, but can be done, you know, in a mass production kind of way throughout the world. And then I thought, you know who else I'm going to want? I'm going to want religious leaders, because religious leaders can give a meaning to this. Like, you know, for example, the earth is given to you, you know, take care of it, you know, or whatever it is, whatever is the meaning orientation that can sustain people's commitment to it. And people who come, you know, I'm gonna need folks from Islam, and I'm gonna need Catholics, and I'm gonna need Protestants, and I'm gonna need Buddhists, and I'm gonna need, you know, I'm gonna need really diverse religious leaders who can somehow come up with ways that fit with each other, as well as inspire the folks that they're trying to serve. And then I'm gonna need educators, you know, who can really, you know, grow up a whole generation of people who get this. And I need, and in each of those things, those folks need to be fantastically skilled and educated and good at what they do. But I also need them to really be like 2/3 fantastically expert at what they do, and 1/3 able to see it in the whole, and really collaborate with others in the whole, and realize that whatever orientation they take, it actually has impact on whether this whole endeavor could succeed, you know, because none of those vantage points and types of expertise can actually win the day. And so with this subject of polymath, sort of, you know, I think that there's an element of cultivating in folks with expertise the ability to see the whole and play well with others in order to play the diverse roles that are required to actually craft an adequately complex strategy to deal with an enormously complex issue, which actually might be an opportunity to organize a level of collaboration across the entire planet, which has never, ever yet happened in the history of human life on this planet. So this might be an incredible challenge. It might be, looking back on it, an amazing, remarkable opportunity that's going to take all these folks with all their levels of expertise, sort of not just having, you know, the blinders on to see what they're good at and what their language focuses them on and their expertise and their experience and all that, but also cultivates that ability to work collaboratively across the. See what I'm trying to say here? I wonder if that's an orientation to polymathy, which actually celebrates both expertise and collaboration.
Yes.
Maybe it's both.
So one of the ways that I think about polymaths is that they're multi-experts. Like they've got 2 areas of expertise or more. They're multi-experts. So they might be like the scientist who's also a politician, or, you know, religious leader who invents things on the side or something, you know, like it is possible. We got decades to live, you know, we can become multi-experts. We've got time. If we choose that, we can. So polymaths are experts. They're just multi-experts. And the thing, there's a study I read, which was fascinating, that said that people who are basically more polymathic, they said it in a different way. They called it functional intrapersonal diversity. And it was a whole big thing. But basically it means they worked in multiple functions and developed expertise. So basically they're polymaths. Polymathic people, this study showed, are better at understanding the strengths of others. So when you need to play well with others, it helps that you've been exposed. Oh, I know a bit about economics. I can kind of speak your language a little bit, even if I'm not as much of an expert as you are. It helps you wrap your head around what other people are working on and what they can do. And it helps you tap into their strengths and gel as a team better. So polymaths, basically, they are experts. They're just multi-experts. And they are well at playing. Not everybody. There are some rude, mean, arrogant polymaths out in the world. I'm not saying they're all great, but as a general rule, they're better at finding common ground with other people because they've got more experiences. And they're also better at understanding the strengths of other people that they're working with. And that is very valuable in the face of the complexity that you talked about with global warming as an example. I think we need polymaths to solve the difficult problems of our time, and we need specialists. I'm not saying we don't need specialists, but we need both. And we've got to prepare the pipeline for that, you know.
Thank you, Angela. Up next, I have Laura.
I don't know, after Jeff's thing, it's like a little hard to even talk. I can only say in your dreams, Jeff, but it's I would say, I was just thinking though about where it all begins, you know, and I think within our educational system, we have to think very differently about how we cultivate students, you know, how we grow our students has to change dramatically. We have to focus on teaching them how to learn and to think and how to be problem solvers and how to be inventive and all the things that we want ultimately. And that has nothing to do with subject matter. It's just general, you know, the developing the meta level skills required, you know, generalized and specific, you know, to areas. And I think in that sense, we can teach them to be polymaths very easily because, you know, they're sort of the general meta level, have to think about, I have a problem here. What is it that has to be solved? You know, what are the elements? What are the key elements in this problem that I have to look at? What depends on the other thing and so forth. And, you know, what goals have to be set and so forth. And then the very specific sort of things about the topic area. And you certainly want them to be able to be inventive and creative and all those things and just let them fly, you know, don't worry about what grade you're in, don't worry about what subject matter, you know, just have them have things that they can work on, that the material that the subject matter in the problems that they're working on in and of itself is kind of like a polymath kind of problem, you know, that they work on. So give them polymath problems to solve when they're in school as part of their learning, you know, so it's not a problem in a specific singular area, but in a multiple area where they have to think about multiple things at a time, you know, and let's create that kind of individual. So that's who goes out, you know, you know, as an adult in the future. And so that's all I was thinking about.
Yeah, I completely agree that polymathy isn't just about, oh, I'm going to learn science and I'm going to learn art. it's a general orientation to let me continue to learn. Let me use the resources at my disposal. Let me use technology to extend my capacity, to extend my memory, to be able to pull up information as needed, or use my network to gather information to help solve problems as needed. It's an orientation to problem solving and to learning and to enjoying life even. You know, what really bothers me actually is that the way our educational system is designed, and this is what I heard from people I interviewed, is that in like K through 12, you do learn about different subjects. They're not integrated. Nobody's making linkages between them. So that's a failure of it. But when then you turn 18, you go off to college, and okay, you've been prepared to learn about lots of things. And now you just got to pick one major, and you're 18, and you got to pick one thing that you're supposed to be expert in the whole rest of your life when you're a teenager. Huh? It doesn't make sense.
Absolutely not. Yeah, I used to tell kids, think about multiple things to study. Don't think about one thing, and try and be creative about the things that you like, and try and put them together as something that might be viable to study.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
really,
I'm double majoring, and I think it's great when someone, if you got to fit in the current system, or you got to pick a major and a minor, or two majors or whatever, pick things you like, but how fun would it be to pick two things that are totally different too?
I was just say go for urban planning. That's one great major that's got multiple. You have all kinds of things that you're actually building into that. Urban planning, architecture, economics, political science, social sciences. It's a well-packed major. It's a polymath major if there ever was one.
Nice.
Thank you, Laura. Up next, I have Jing.
Yeah, talk about education. I really agree. I mentioned in our small group discussion, when the kids very young, they're full of curiosity, full of life, full of energy. Once they enter the school, they just lost. Our education system successfully squeeze all the energy, and they look so bored, so out of it's so sad, And I think you mentioned about they're become popular project-based learning. I actually sent my kids choice school, which is project-based learning. And it's interesting because we're in a very good school district, and not many people want to send their kids, especially in high school. They want to go to the college. They're not so sure about this new way, but it's all about, you learn through the project instead of individual subject. So you kind of combine, it's kind of like polymath in a way. So I think that's kind of the new trend. But I think education is very conservative both in college. And I actually think for the college now they have double major or major and minor. I think that's a great thing, because even you may not be the expert in both, but at least you can understand other people's language, like you said, so you can communicate with other group.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah.
Yeah, I would like to see, there are so many changes I would like to see in the school system, but one of the major changes I'd like to see, just a quick commentary on the educational system, K through 12 and higher education, is that I'd like to see it more self-directed, like for people to build their own learning agendas, and that they get to pick what goes in their own head a bit more. Now, there is a place for curated content for experts or multi-experts in that field to say, okay, here's the reading you need to do, here's the conversations and questions. There is value in having content curated by someone who's familiar with that field. But there's also something really wonderful about just following your own curiosities and going down rabbit holes and figuring out your own how you're going to learn is not just in the classroom, not reading books. There are so many ways to learn nowadays, especially. And I think we should empower learners to decide for themselves a bit more than is happening right now.
Yeah, I think the project-based learning actually supposed to be you create a project, you learn the subject based on that. Unfortunately, in our school district, because people are still worried about go to college, so they didn't abandon the subject yet, but they just add another project. I think people just uncertainty and the education. And I watched Spielberg's new movie about his life. You know, he didn't go to college, and all the success people we see, they never go to college. It's like because they know what they want, they can learn through their passions, through their own way. And it's kind of the college is more for the degree, which you can show for employee instead of learning, real learning.
I know. Yeah, getting a degree has nothing to do, it doesn't prove you're smart. Because people who are higher in IQ and lower in IQ could still end up with the same degree. It mostly just, it doesn't even prove that you learned anything really. It just proves you passed tests and passed courses and jumped through the hoops enough to end up with a piece of paper that someone else says, okay, you're educated. But that's not really, like, learning is so much more than those things. And learning does not need a school to take place. Life is a school, actually. Anyway, I see Joe raising his hand.
Yeah, I have, it just, in a way, I guess it'll set up Shrikant for a little bit later, is that Harold Nelson actually, when he was at Berkeley, kind of created who's the author of Design Way, the book we covered here at 52 Living Ideas, designed his own curriculum when he got his PhD. So that he was able to explore it. And he, you know, is setting up a new design school. And that is based on, like, a lot of this, it's an interesting concept. It's based on a flight school. And he'll be here, you know, talking about it. Shrikant could probably talk about it even better than myself. But this whole idea is that, you know, he talks about how design thinking requires a polymathy approach, but it's also this way of exploration on your own. It's this freedom that exists with it as well, and that this ultimately, in a way, leads you to create something that hasn't been thought of yet. And so I think that's it, and that's in line with polymathy in a way. It's also been associated with innovation and things along those lines. So I just, you know, that was just a parallel, just building off of what you were saying. And so I don't know if anybody's next, but I know Shrikant is probably going to announce something for this weekend. So maybe that kind of is you can comment, and then
I'm just gonna let it lead into Shrikant then. Hi, Shrikant.
Hi, Angela. Always amazing to see you. Nice to see you. So we have actually 1, 2, 3, 4 polymaths this weekend. So don't miss any of them. Okay, they are just incredible people, all of them. The first one is Yasuhiko Kimura. He'll be here at 11 o'clock tomorrow. And he's going to be talking about remembrance of the thing's future. So this is all about, it's all about that it's, you know, there is a deep level of imagination and creativity in order to vision the world, you know, create an authentic vision of the world. And he's going to be talking about that. This is part of his series, New Spirituality for the Future. And every time he comes, he does something which is much better than everything that he did in the past. So it's like everything kind of builds on itself and it goes into new areas. So it's really spectacular. At 9 o'clock, we're going to have Harold Nelson. And he has launched his design flight school. And his entire approach is polymathic approach about how do you teach systemic design, where you are designing anything that you design speaks to all your faculties. It brings together everything. And he has very deep ideas. You know, we went through his book, The Design Way, and Zheng did a magnificent job of doing slides on that, which Harold always comments on every time I talk to him about this series. But what he's going to do is that he's going to take, he did a presentation a week ago. And what he's going to do is that I mean, I told him that, look, there is a distance between his integrative approach to design and how design is handled in the world today. And it is not enough just to speak of it, but to fully explicate how exactly this kind of systemic design is different from the design that is done of things around us. And he's going to be going through his slides, slide by slide. I'll be having conversation with him as he goes through it. You're welcome to ask any questions from the point of view of somebody on YouTube watching the video, trying to understand his work. See, many of us here participated in this deep dive in his work. So, 52 Living Ideas has really a core group of people who are not part of the architectural tradition, actually. Many of us are not, but understand his work deeply. And I want to make his work accessible. The purpose of the series of meetups that he's going to do is to make his work accessible to anybody who wants it. So that's what is going to be at 9 p.m. Tomorrow. 9 p.m. on Sunday, we have a couple, John and Yoshimi Brett from New Zealand, presenting on their idea of tetrameme. So this is all about this fourfold nature that Yasuhiko talked about, the fourfold vision, but using a tetrahedron to actually cover all aspects of life whenever you're thinking about anything. So they have been working on this concept for the past 25 years as tetra maps or tetrameme, and they are going to be presenting that, which is, again, it's a way of looking at everything from every possible angle. So don't miss any of that. So that's what I had. So now I just want to ask, so firstly, I think this series is going so well. Jang, Evanik, and Joe, your guests are amazing. And the discussion is great. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah, we work together well as a team, so we are very happy. And thanks to our guests, they are wonderful.
Yeah, just echoing what Jing said, it's great to work with her and Joe. It's a great team. So, and Angela, great conversation. I learned so much, and it was fun to just sit back and kind of like learn from everybody. So, thank you.
Thank you so much. It's heartwarming for me when anything I do helps people or it was interesting or enlightening in any way. So thank you for allowing me to be here and share and talk about my passion, because obviously you could probably sense I'm very passionate about polymathy. So I'm just happy to have been here. Thank you guys for inviting me.
Yeah, I really like your animated and passion, because people always say I like that. Where you get all this energy? You're also like so excited all the time. And they always want me to do marketing. Every company I go, they're like, why don't you do marketing? Because you're so excited. I think that's the advantage of Polymath.
Well, Angela, do you have anything you want to say before we wrap up?
I guess this will be my final thought, is just like, what's more important than living a good life? This series is important, helping people think about how to design a life they'll love. It matters. It's important. And polymathy is a great way to help you live a full life, have the full human experience, try lots of things, meet lots of kind of people, attend lots of 52 Living Ideas sessions, take classes, workshops, seminars, retreats, whatever you got to do. Watch videos, read books, listen to audiobooks, make your life one big adventure. Make it a learning opportunity. Find your best self through trial and error and finding your way that's your own path, not one that's been dictated to you. Own your life, be sovereign, be free, be you, Be authentic, be brave, be curious, be open, be bold. That is what life is here for. We're not here to be a copy of someone else. Society may try to feed us that messaging, for sure. That's going to happen. Fit in, be like the others, do what you're told, get in the box, pick your one thing. That's what we're going to be fed. But that is not a way to live your best life, in my opinion. The way to live your best life is to find your own truth, to be really you, to let your essence come out in authentic, honest ways. Not doing harm to others. I'm not saying be you if it hurts other people, but be you, find you, let your essence out. That's my final thought.
And be kind.
And be kind. Excellent. Any others? Does anyone else want to add?
I think we will have much less depression if everybody doing that. We will have so many depression in the society because people cannot be themselves.
Yeah, for sure.
And also because people stop learning, people stop it, just stop,
And if you don't use it, you lose it.
right?
You don't use it, you lose it. Keep learning. Don't stop that, because then pretty soon it'll get to where it's too hard to learn. And then you get problems and you're like, I can't deal with this because I can't learn my way through the problem. You know?
Yeah. They just stop, you know, they fall into a track of life and it's limited, but that's all they do. And then they just, that's it. Not
Jeff-
like Jeff, of course. Jeff lives in this amazing world that he creates and thinks about, you know, and fantasizes about. So he's not. That's all right, Jeff. I think it's good to do that.
Jeff, what are your final thoughts?
Angela, I was just going to thank you for the passion and the inspiration and the vision and the follow through and you know, everything it's taken to achieve the things that you have on this path and how welcoming you are to all of us in it, really inviting us and encouraging us, you know, to not only find our way, but to do that together. And you have been that at every turn. I've, you know, you have really, you're a very consistent person and, you know, in that energy. And I just want to tell you, thank you for that and how much I appreciate it. And what a great contribution you have made to this gathering and the things that we get to do together.
Thank you so much. That really warms my heart. And you're wonderful and insightful and wise and well-spoken. And it's such a pleasure to always see you on these meetups when I come here.
Just remember, I'm at least 10% wrong.
Me too.
Never.
And the worst part is, I don't know which 10% it is.
Not the last sentence.
Forms on a t-shirt or something.
Yeah, Angela, thanks.
Thanks.
I feel energized. Okay.
Glad. I'm so glad. All right,
All
guys.
right.
Yes, thanks so much. I think our
Thank
meeting
you.
dragged
Thanks.
on longer. And
Thanks,
it's so
Evan.
fun to have all the energy and the people here connected. You know, it's funny, I write a poem in Chinese, unfortunately. It's basically about how people like parallel lines never meet, and everybody sit in their wheel looking at the sky. And the bird, the chicken talk to duck, they don't understand what they're talking to each other. And so you look down, you look up in the sky from the wheel, and you look down, think about the meaning of life. It just reflects how hard people can understand each other. Especially today, we live in all the rabbit hole. We're digging for ourselves, and they're so hard to communicate. But only in fact, to the idea, I have no problem to communicate. But in reality, my life, a lot of people I cannot. I just like people just talk about very different kind of like zones. Anyway.
It's so easy to project onto a complex, sentient, alive creature a shallow impression of what they are. It takes more work, more patience, more energy investment to really see and understand someone else. And I love doing that. I just love learning about people. and not just at a shallow level, but like really understanding their stories. To me, it's fascinating. It enriches my own life to give my understanding. You know, I gave my understanding to Polymaths. I invested a lot of effort into understanding this type of group because it's the kind of person I want to be. But yeah, what you're saying about that poem, I would encourage everybody, like, see how much you can try to understand people, especially ones that are different than you, and see what happens to your personhood. Have a diverse friend group. Listen to stories. One of my favorite YouTube channels, it's called Soft White Underbelly. And there's the filmmaker, he just interviews people like homeless people, drug addicts, pimps, like people I don't know. And I just love, wow, that's fascinating. I can see how their life turned out that way. If I would have gone through that too, I might have ended up like they are. It's so good for our souls to offer empathy and compassion and understanding to people, even people different from ourselves. And in doing that, we can offer kindness and compassion and help people who are even like have problems that are nothing like our lives. Like I think that the competent, capable polymaths of our world, it's our responsibility to help lift up the people who need help. And our world has a lot of those right now. So, you know, my desire to understand human beings, it's a kind of polymathy for me. I like to learn about people. I like to learn about people. And I think it's a worthwhile investment for everybody. Try to understand people, especially the ones different from you, because that's where you can learn.
Yeah, exactly.
On that note, I think that's a good note to end on. Evanique, what do you think? Shrikant?
I
Jang?
think so.
All right.
Thank
This
you.
is almost 3 hours. We were into
I
it.
know.
Yes, we were.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Okay.
So
Have
see
a
you
great
all.
evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a
Have a
great
good night.
evening,
Night, everyone.
everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.